It began with a dusty box in an attic. Tucked between yellowed family photos and a bundle of war medals was a set of documents. Typewritten, faded, and stamped with a swastika. For 36-year-old Emily Roth, a middle school history teacher from upstate New York, it was supposed to be just another weekend helping her father clean out his late mother's house. But what she found that day wouldn't just alter her understanding of her family, it would fracture it. And what came next would force the world to ask, how do you grieve when the person you love most helped orchestrate the unthinkable? Emily Roth wasn't the kind of person you'd expect to become the center of a national media storm. She was soft-spoken, deliberate, the kind of teacher students remembered for kind notes and quiet encouragement. Divorced, childless, and deeply private, her world revolved around her father, David Roth, a retired biology professor with a love of chess, cooking, and long walks. After her grandmother Ruth passed away at 92, Emily offered to help her dad pack up the house she'd lived in since 1957. Most of it was uneventful: books, costume jewelry, a few old letters, until Emily found the box. It was buried under old coats in the attic crawlspace. Wooden, unmarked, and locked. Her father said he didn't recognize it, but found a small key tucked behind a support beam. Inside, they found German military documents, photographs from the 1940s, and a crisp leather-bound journal with WR embossed in gold. David froze. Emily asked, "Who's WR?" Her father turned away. "It's probably just some old family thing. Junk. We'll toss it." But Emily didn't. Back home, curiosity overrode discretion. Emily opened the journal. The entries began innocuously: weather notes, names, numbers. But soon the tone changed. Words like transport, quota, and liquidation started appearing. Then names. Towns in Poland she taught her students about: Lublin, Majdanek, Chelmno. On one page, arrived today, camp at full capacity, children separated, executions scheduled by sunrise, 93% efficiency. At the top of every page was the same name, Wilhelm Rothstein. Emily stared at it for hours. Rothstein, her surname before her grandfather had changed it in 1958. The man behind the journal wasn't just a soldier. He was an SS officer, a transport coordinator. He wasn't pushing papers, he was pushing families into gas chambers. Emily cross-referenced the ID numbers in the documents with archived Holocaust records. Each one matched. Her grandfather had been instrumental in the systematic murder of thousands. She confronted her father. David Roth listened in silence, his face pale. "My mother told me he was an accountant, that he left Germany after the war. She said he was just doing clerical work. I didn't know." But something in his voice cracked. Emily pressed further. "Didn't you ever wonder why we never talked about him? Why you took Mom's maiden name after they married?" David hesitated, then finally whispered, "I did, but I didn't want to know." The next day, Emily reached out to a Holocaust documentation center. Within weeks, they confirmed it. Wilhelm Rothstein had been on a wanted list in the 1950s. He'd escaped Europe under a false identity through Operation Paperclip, the US program that quietly absorbed German experts after World War II. But Wilhelm wasn't a scientist. He wasn't a rocket engineer. He was a war criminal who'd slipped through the cracks. And for over 60 years, he lived in New York as a loving husband, a quiet neighbor, and a devoted grandfather. Emily's world began to unravel. Emily stopped sleeping. She stopped teaching. Every family memory became laced with horror. She thought about the time her grandfather taught her to bake rye bread, the wooden cross he'd carved for her 6th birthday, the way he'd hummed lullabies in German when she had nightmares. How could that same man have stood before children at a concentration camp and ordered their deaths? As word spread, media descended. The story became national. History teacher uncovers family's Nazi past. Some questioned its authenticity. Others called her a hero for coming forward. But Emily didn't feel brave. She felt broken. She attended a local synagogue for the first time in years. Sat at the back, unseen, as a rabbi spoke of memory, justice, and generational guilt. She visited the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. alone. At the Hall of Names, she searched the database for each name listed in the journal. She found 117 children, women, and elderly marked for relocation in Wilhelm's neat cursive. She began reading survivor testimonies. One caught her breath. A woman named Tova Levi, now 89, had survived a transport from Lublin by hiding in a railcar ash heap. She'd mentioned an officer named Rothstein, who wore black gloves and always carried a stopwatch. Emily found her living in Baltimore. They met. Tova looked at Emily's face, then said, "You have his eyes." Emily whispered, "I think I came here to say I'm sorry." Tova gently shook her head. "You are not him, but you can choose what you do with what you know." As Emily stood to leave, Tova reached into her coat and handed her a photograph. A black and white image of a young girl, Tova's sister, staring through the wooden slats of a train car. "I never got to bury her," she said, "but he knew her name. That means something." Emily took the photo, her hands trembling. Back home that night, she returned to the attic one last time. She pulled out the false bottom of the box. Hidden underneath, she found more documents. Letters signed with U.S. Army SEALs, a German passport, and something else. A Polaroid from the 1970s. Her father, as a boy, standing with a man in a dark coat. Behind them, the faint outline of barbed wire fences. A concentration camp. Why were they there? Emily stared at the image, and for the first time she began to suspect her father may have known more than he ever let on. Emily couldn't sleep that night. The Polaroid haunted her. She knew every American concentration campsite had been closed decades before the 1970s. So why was her father there? Smiling? She flipped the photo over. Faint handwriting. Treblinka visit, 1973. Treblinka, one of the most brutal extermination camps. Why would a father bring his child there for a visit? She questioned David the next morning. He deflected at first. "We were visiting Europe. Your grandfather said it was historical, just a stop on a trip." But Emily wasn't a child anymore. She pressed harder. Finally, David broke. "I remember the smell," he said softly. "The quiet." He called it a place of victory. I was too young to know what it meant, but I remember the way he smiled. Emily's breath caught. David confessed that he remembered hearing things. Late-night phone calls, hushed conversations in German between Wilhelm and shadowy visitors. Emily pressed for names. He said he never knew them, only that once a year, the same three men would meet in secret at the Roth home. "He made me memorize German hymns," David added, staring at the floor. "Songs I didn't understand. Songs I still can't forget." Emily stared at him. "And you never told anyone?" "I wanted to believe he was just eccentric. I didn't want to believe he was a monster." Driven by a need for truth, Emily dug deeper. With the help of a Holocaust scholar at Columbia, she began researching escape routes used by Nazis after the war. Her grandfather had likely used the Ratlins, secret passageways from Europe to South America and the U.S. used by Nazi fugitives, often aided by sympathetic clergy or corrupted officials. Wilhelm's immigration file, now unsealed, revealed something shocking. He didn't come alone. He came with three others: Gerhard Wexler, Otto Neumann, Fritz Albrecht, all registered under falsified professions. One as a watchmaker, another as a tailor. All arrived in 1952. All settled quietly in the Northeast. She tracked them. Gerhard had died in Florida in 1996. Fritz in Michigan in 2002. Otto Neumann was still alive, living under the name Owen Nash, in a nursing home in Pennsylvania. Emily drove 4 hours alone. Her hands shook as she stood at the threshold. Inside, Owen Nash sat hunched in a recliner, eyes clouded by age but still sharp enough to notice her hesitation. "You're Wilhelm's girl," he rasped. Not a question, a statement. Emily sat, stunned. "You knew him?" "I was him," Owen whispered. "All of us were him, parts of him, pieces of that machine." Emily asked why they had come to the U.S. To wait, he said, to see if the world would forget. Then he gave her something, a key, small, brass. To the safe deposit box, he said. Your grandfather kept records, real ones, just in case. Just in case of what? She asked. In case someone came looking. Inside were 3 items. A sealed envelope marked Operation Phoenix, a reel of microfilm, a photo album. The album was filled with faces, smiling men in SS uniforms, children playing under Nazi banners, picnic, a wedding, a funeral, all dated post 1950, the same men she'd traced. But here, they were together, celebrating. In America, at the back of the album was a letter written in Wilhelm's handwriting. The last line read, "The Reich does not die, it transforms." The microfilm showed blueprints, detailed schematics of detention camps, marked Southwest U.S. Contingency. Each plan had a stamped date, 1958. Emily stared in disbelief. These weren't old. They were post-war. Accompanying the files were letters between Wilhelm and a man codenamed Sentinel, discussing experiments, racial policies, and even references to psychological warfare programs. One name kept reappearing, Project Monarch. Emily searched. What she found horrified her. Project Monarch was a rumored offshoot of MKUltra, the CIA's mind control initiative. Denied for decades, believed to have been shelved, but the files suggested it had been revived, and that Wilhelm had been involved. She found a photo of a young woman, strapped to a chair, electrodes taped to her temple. On the back, Trial 18, Subject, ER. Her initials. Emily froze. Her eyes scanned the date, March 1991. She had no memory of that day, but for the first time, Emily realized this legacy wasn't just about the past. It was still happening, and she may have been part of it all along. Emily couldn't breathe. She called her father. Why is there a photo of me with wires on my head? There was silence. Then, you weren't supposed to remember, David confessed. When Emily was 6 years old, she developed what he called uncontrollable night episodes. Screaming fits, night terrors, sudden bursts of German she was never taught. Wilhelm insisted on a special treatment at a private facility. He claimed it was psychological testing, harmless, necessary. David agreed. He was a young, terrified father, still under the sway of a man who raised him like a god. What happened to me? Emily asked. David's voice broke. They erased it. Whatever they did, they made you forget. It had closed in 1993, but Emily broke inside. Room after room lay abandoned. Mold on the walls, files scattered on floors. In one office, she found a locked filing cabinet. She pried it open with a crowbar. Inside, yellow folders, stamped with red ink, confidential. Each file had a subject ID, dates, session logs. Trial 18, Emily Roth. Status, responsive. Memory suppression stable. Subject exhibits linguistic recall in suppressed language. Genetic alignment confirmed. There was more. Subject shows signs of inherited cognition. Emotional reactions to Holocaust stimuli were profound. Conditioning appears successful. Long-term observation advised. At the bottom, signed, Dr. Otto Newman, alias Owen Nash. He wasn't just a war criminal. He was a mind control researcher. Emily had her DNA tested. Her maternal side was Polish-Jewish victims. Her paternal side, German perpetrators. But what shocked the researchers was her epigenetic markers. Trauma was encoded into her DNA. Scientists call it transgenerational epigenetic inheritance, the way grief, terror, and war can imprint onto gene expression. Emily hadn't just inherited her grandfather's face. She had inherited memory without experience. She was the perfect subject for experimentation, an intersection of the killer and the killed. A former CIA contractor, who chose to remain anonymous, came forward after seeing Emily's story break into obscure academic circles. He confirmed what she feared. Operation Phoenix was real. Not a Nazi revival in the traditional sense, but a quiet infiltration of American power structures by individuals escaping prosecution. Men like Wilhelm were folded into programs like MKUltra, their experience with torture and control repurposed by Cold War paranoia. Some children, often those with genetic relevance, were used in early memory experiments. Emily was one of many. Some died, some vanished, and some, like her, were meant to forget. "I need you to tell me everything," she demanded. David finally confessed the final truth. "I didn't just suspect. I knew," he said. "I helped him falsify the papers to stay in the US. I thought, if I kept quiet, it would die with him. But he made me a part of it. And when you started to show signs, he convinced me it was genetic destiny." Emily collapsed to her knees. "You let them use me," he wept. "I thought I was protecting you, but I was protecting myself." Emily chose to break the story wide open. With the help of journalists and historians, she published every document, every photo, every logbook. A book deal followed. A congressional inquiry opened quietly into historical CIA programs. But justice? It remained elusive. The old men were dead or dying. The institutions that once sheltered them denied everything. She read each name aloud. One by one, Tova passed away before the book was released. But she had given Emily one final message. "You do not carry their guilt. You carry the weight of knowing. And you are using it." One unread message. Subject: "We knew him too." Body: "My name is Rachel Newman. My grandfather was Otto. I think we should talk. You're not the only one. What would you do if you discovered your family helped commit one of history's darkest crimes?" Emily Roth had to choose between silence and truth, and what she uncovered still sends shockwaves through history. If this story gripped you, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell for part 4 of our darkest investigations yet. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you found out your bloodline carried secrets like these? Your voice matters.